Right, good morning and welcome everyone to this meeting of the local review body of the 26th of January. I can confirm that the meeting has been properly called and is quorate. Can I please ask members to appoint a chair for the meeting, please?
I suggest David McKee.
Councillor McKee, you happy to accept?
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the local review body, Friday, 26th of January. We've got the apologies from Mr. Giusti.
Yes, Chair. 4 members present. Apologies from Councillor Giusti.
Thank you. Have we any declarations of interest? Councillor McComb.
Thank you. In relation to item 6, 10 Agnew Crescent, Wigtown. It was the Macomb family home from the 1930s until about 2 years ago. But, I think my aunt would be responsible for the current windows. I think, given the strong family connection with the property, it would be appropriate for me not to take any part in the proceedings. I'll seek guidance on the matter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as Councillor McComb is sure is aware, it's always up to individual members to determine their own interest. But as you know, there's also the public perception test. So if you feel that that's an issue, as you say, it may be appropriate for you to leave for that item. I can confirm that the local review body will still be quorate. 3 members present.
Okay, thanks very much, James. Right, Claire, would you like to take us through the procedure, please?
Okay. Thank you, Chair. I can confirm we have 4 notices of review for consideration at this meeting. The first being item 4, North Craigs Farm, Waterbeck, refusal of planning permission in principle for erection of dwelling house 170982 PIP. So you have the usual context, notes of review and related to documents, report and handling, observation of appointed officer, comments of applicant agents, planning application form, the decision notice, the relevant extracts of the LDP, and you have the photos of the application site and locality. The grounds of refusal are on pages 100 to 101 of your papers, being it has not been satisfactorily demonstrated that a new dwelling house is essential at this location for the operational needs of the small agricultural business. It would not be within or be well related to a small business group, and none of the other housing in the countryside criteria apply, and accordingly the proposal is contrary to the policy of the Council as stated in Local Development Plan Policy H3 and to national policy set out in the Scottish Planning Policy, which permit the erection of new houses in the countryside only in special circumstances identified in development plans, and none of these circumstances apply in this case. You have the requested method of determination, being the applicant has requested that the review be dealt with by 1 or more hearing sessions, if the LRB consider this necessary, and by a site inspection. The applicant's agent has stated that the request is very important to enable the LRB to see the isolated location of this farm. So you have the grounds stated in the notice of review. In summary, the applicant's agent has stated there is an agricultural need for a house to support this rural business, and that because farming is a significant component of the rural economy, it's important that planning policy continues to support the needs of the farming enterprises, and it has been demonstrated through the labour requirement report that a house is essential in this case. 2. In relation to the appointed officer's report and handling, the applicant's agent has provided a number of points. At 4.3 to 4.5, the submitted labour requirement report and some supporting information confirms the proposal criteria. The proposal meets criterion 2 of LDP policy H3 and associated supplementary guidance. In relation to 4.6, this is not part of the scaling down of the farming operation, as it is new medium-sized farming business. The business requires a dwelling house to enable the farming operation to be properly managed. The need for the dwelling house is not as a direct result of the recent severance of a farm from an agricultural holding at Crosslands. Farmhouse is still part of an operational farm. In relation to 4.7, it's unreasonable to break down the labour units provided that is made clear on pages 11 and 12 of the submitted labour requirement report. The absence of some of the stock at the time of the case officer's visit was due to the remaining sheep which had not been sold being in the shed. There is no full-time worker on site as there is currently no accommodation on the land. Full-time labour is required on the land and the submitted labour requirement report confirms this. At 4.8, animal health and welfare is of paramount importance and requires an experienced worker to be in attendance at all times. This can only be provided by a worker being present on a full-time basis and resident on the farm. In relation to 4.10, security of stock and machinery is an important factor, and the dwelling house will provide a good level of visibility. In relation to 4.11, financial details provided must not be disregarded as they confirm that the operation as a whole is viable and will continue to be so. In relation to 4.12, the site which has been selected is the most suitable to meet the requirements of the farming operation. The location of the house is well related to a small number of existing dwelling houses, and a site visit would confirm this. In relation to the new agricultural building, the applicant's agent has provided that this was erected by the applicants following their move from Crosslands Farm, and that therefore was not retained as part of the sale of Crosslands. The financial investment in the building confirms the applicant's commitment to remain in farming. In relation to the previous application for the erection of a dwelling house, the decision to withdraw the application was made by the present applicants. The number of pre-application inquiries lodged represents the determination by the applicants to obtain permission for a dwelling house which the applicants consider essential on the site. That the site of the proposed house was relocated in an attempt to obtain support for the proposal. The applicant's agent has advised that when small areas of agricultural land are remote, they are managed successfully as part of the overall farming operation, but it's important to point out that this is a standalone farming unit and not an extension of a larger farm, and will be successfully managed as such. If there are further comments from the interested parties, being the comments from the appointed officer and the comments from the applicant's agent, you have all the references to the relevant development plan policies. So the main issues for the LRB to consider are: does the proposal conform with the relevant development plan policies, and critically, does it comply with development plan policy H3 and the supplementary guidance on housing in the countryside? Specifically, has it been satisfactorily demonstrated that the proposed new dwelling house is essential at this location for the operational needs of the associated agricultural business? Would the dwelling house be well related to a small building group? Would it meet the terms of policy H3 and the associated supplementary guidance on housing in the countryside in any other way? Pages 5 and 6 of this supplementary guidance contain guidance specific to claimed agriculture or rural business needs. If it is considered that the proposal does not comply with the terms of the development plan, are there any material considerations which would indicate that planning permission should be granted as an exception to policy? So, I haven't outlined the documents within the members' papers, and it falls to the LRB, firstly, to determine whether it has sufficient information to consider the review. It is confirmed that there will be no representations from any parties here today. The LRB has the following options for this and the following cases. It can decide it has sufficient information before it to enable it to determine the review today. Request further information in the form of written representations. That if it was doing this, the LRB would have to state precisely what information it was seeking and who would provide it. Resolve to hold a hearing, again specifying who would be invited to speak and on what matters. Resolve to hold a site visit, accompanied or unaccompanied. This can be done in conjunction with any of the above, but would not allow a decision to be made today. If the LRB resolves it has sufficient information and no further procedure is required, then the LRB has full powers to uphold, reverse or vary a determination. The decision notice would include a statement of the terms in which the planning authority has decided the case reviewed. You have a planning advisor at your meeting. He is here to assist in all 4 items on today's papers. It's confirmed he has not had any involvement in any of these cases and was not the case officer or the appointed officer for any of these applications. He is here purely to provide independent advice as needed on matters of planning, policy, law or process of the LRB. So members are clear, no further clarification is required. I'll ask the chairman firstly to lead you through the papers so you can determine whether you have sufficient information.
Right, thanks very much, Claire. What I would intend to do was take you through a section at a time. I've got them marked off. I'll give you the page numbers that I'm referring to, if we can go through it that way. And if you have any questions on any section, we'll just take them as they arise. Robert, sorry? Aye, could you give us the photographs first?
Certainly, Chair. Just for the avoidance of doubt, these replicate the pictures that you see within the papers. Obviously, these ones are going to be in colour. Trying to find it's on page 187 of the papers. So the first view is looking north. This is across the application site from the B722 public road, which is just on the left-hand side there. Probably the best reference point is on page 57 of the papers. You've got a location plan there. It's the one that was submitted by the applicant. So that shows you this view is looking northwards along the B722, and you can see the side of the proposed dwelling house would be on the right-hand side there. Rigfoot House is the one on the right-hand side with the white gable and the chimney. You can see that just marked, so that would be just to the north of the site for the proposed dwelling house. This is another view. Again, it's from the B722. It's looking more in an easterly direction, and that's across the application site. And again, this is looking pretty much due east across the application site from the B722. So this is showing the northern boundary of the application site on the left-hand side, as I understand it. This is looking round again, the same position, but panning round more to the south across the application site. So you've got that large field area there. And this is turning to look north across the vacant land, and this is towards Rigfoot House. This picture is panning round. It's looking south across the vacant land towards the application site. It's next to Rigfoot House, and again, this is further up. It's looking north along the B722, beyond Rigfoot House up that road. And in the opposite direction, this is further up the road. It's looking south towards the B722 and towards the existing houses at Rigfoot. You've got a pair of semi-detached houses there. You can't see it in this picture, but Rigfoot House is further south. I think it's out of shot because it's behind the houses there. The other point I was going to make, and this is true of all applications on the agenda today, the proposed local development plan was approved at full council on Thursday last week, so Thursday the 18th of January 2018. It's due to be published on Monday the 29th of January, and there'll be a period allowed for representations to be made to that proposed local development plan. In planning terms, when you're making decisions today, it is a material consideration at this stage, but I would emphasise this is not yet the development plan. The development plan is still the Council's present local development plan, so the policies you have listed in the report are those from the development plan. Nevertheless, it is a material consideration and you should give it some weight, although I would suggest that would be limited at the moment. What I will do with each case is highlight the differences between the existing LDP policies and the proposed LDP policies, and hopefully this will demonstrate they're not significant. In relation to this particular item, the policies listed are on, if I can just get the right page number, pages 105 to 184. So the first policy that is subject to change, when you look at, on page 107, you look at policy OP1, and what the proposed LDP is doing is basically keeping that substantially the same. It is changing the first paragraph very subtly. So at the moment, if I can just find the new version. At the moment it says all development proposals should address to the satisfaction of the council the following where relevant. The new proposed LDP version replaces that and says development will be assessed against the following considerations where relevant to the scale, nature and location of the proposal. So it's a fairly subtle difference, but obviously it's making it much more selective, the application of this policy. The other point further down is in relation to point F, so this is over on page 108. There are additional points now and there have been changes to sustainability, but nothing I would suggest that's particularly relevant to this case. The next policy that's been subject to change is policy OP2. So in the paper at page 108, you've got the existing version of that, so that's the development plan version. There's no change really in the content to that as a result of the proposed LDP. Policy OP3, this is moving to page 109. There are changes to the final point. So it's after the bullet points. At the moment it says this policy is supported by supplementary guidance. The proposed LDP version says supplementary guidance provides further details on the scale and nature of developer contributions, any exceptions that may apply, and the submission of development appraisal information where development viability issues arise. In this case, you're obviously talking about a single dwelling house, so the developer contributions policy is not applicable in relation to education contributions. H3, policy H3, which I would suggest is the pivotal policy in this case. This is the one that's been looked at in terms of the principle of the development and whether that's acceptable. There are changes to, you see the 5 bullet points on page 109. So there are changes to points 1, 2, 4 and 5 of that, which I'll just come on to. So at point 1 at the moment it says the council will support housing proposals in the countryside where the proposal meets one or more of the following criteria. So at the moment the first point says is within or well related to a small building group defined as 3 or more separate habitable or occupied houses which are well related to each other to create a sense of place. The proposed LDP version changes that and says it is within and or well related to a small building group which is either identified on lists contained in supplementary guidance or is defined as 3 or more separate habitable or occupied houses which are well related to each other and which create a sense of place. So a fairly subtle change in wording there. Looking at point 2, at the moment it says is essential for the needs of agriculture or other business requiring a rural location that cannot be met in a nearby settlement. The proposed version changes that and says it is essential for the needs of agriculture or other business requiring a rural location. So the part saying it that cannot be met in a nearby settlement has come out of the proposed LDP. Point 4 at the moment is, and this is again page 109, it says beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site. The proposed LDP version has changed that and is saying it would involve the beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site. So again, a fairly subtle change there. And the 5th point where it's changed, it says at the moment replace or renovate an existing house with a house of an appropriate scale within the same curtilage. It now says it would replace an existing habitable dwelling with a house of an appropriate scale within the same curtilage. So again, a fairly subtle change to that. In summary, like I say, the proposed LDP doesn't carry much weight at the moment, but you should draw comfort from the fact that it isn't really substantially changing the key policies that are determinant to this case.
Okay, thank you very much, Robert. Right, can we start off notice of review, page 1 to page 13? Anybody any issues want to raise there, questions want to raise? Councillor Blake?
It's not so much on that paper, it's just on the photographs. And will we cover the photographs at the end? Because there are a couple of questions I'd like to ask about that.
Thank you. Anybody any questions on that section? We move to report on handling, pages 15 to 36. Right. Councillor Blake?
It's just one minor point. The report mentions the fact that the presence of a horse is not considered for agricultural purposes, and yet it quite clearly says that it points out that there were no horse there, as if giving it some importance. I just wondered why it would be there at all. Yeah, it's page 21, and it's about 9 or 10 lines up from the bottom. In addition, no horse was evident within the large part of the land, but it quite clearly said before then that it shouldn't be considered necessary for.
The individual horse doesn't qualify, but if it was an equine business, that would be looked on in a different way. I think that's what it means there, Councillor Blake. Robert, do you want to go?
Chair, my reading of that is there's an agricultural justification being put forward, but in this case, there's a horse, I think, within that report it seems to be, but you know, that's not forming part of the agricultural case, it's a recreational, you know, horse, if you like. So what I'm reading from the report is that the appointed officers discounted that from the consideration and drawn the conclusion that on that basis, the labour requirement for the agricultural holding in itself is 0.59 of a labour unit. You can, of course, make a separate case for, you know, an equine business, but the officer's simply saying in terms of the agricultural justification report, they've included a horse which, you know, wasn't meeting the definition of agriculture.
And I can understand that. I just wondered why they would then go into highlight, well, there wasn't any horse there anyway. You know, it seems almost like a throwaway line.
Councillor Young and then Councillor McCall.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wondered if the officer could expand on, obviously there's been some sort of expression or calculation done to arrive at a significant answer like 1.07 labour units. So there must be a formula that some variables were applied to. Is the method of working out these number of units available for scrutiny anywhere?
Chair, just to answer that question, Scottish Agricultural College prepares a handbook yearly, which tends to be used in these calculations, and labour requirement reports are often undertaken by the SAC themselves. They don't need to be, I should point out, it can be any qualified agricultural consultant. What they will tend to do is analyse the particular agricultural unit or business and look at the labour requirements, the annual labour requirements. Now, for example, if you're a dairy farmer, there'll be a certain level of labour required for each differing type of stock you've got in your unit. So if you've got a herd of 50 cattle, for example, you can work out what the labour requirement will be. If you're going to farm using that per year, there'll be a certain number of labour units, annual labour units per head of stock, for example. Other things, you know, if you're silaging your land, as most places do now, if you do 2 or 3 cuts of silage a year, there'll be a labour requirement per area of land, per hectare of land, that you then apply to it. So they basically model the existing business and try and work out what the labour requirement is per year. So that's a number of hours aggregated together and totalised. And then if you're over a certain level, which I think is, from memory, the labour requirement report will be in here. If you're over a certain level, that justifies a full-time presence on the site for agricultural purposes. And you know, the labour requirement report is a key part of that. In this case, there has been a labour requirement support case submitted. I'm just trying to actually find
Page number there.
where it is.
Thank you, Chair. It's page 21 and it's assessed as 0.59 labour units. Page 21. The point I was wanting answered was the labour requirements is at the time of the visit, so it's a snapshot in the life of the holding rather than the potential the holding has for the future.
That's correct. It is a snapshot in time type assessment of the business, yeah.
Councillor McComb?
Thanks, Chair. At the bottom of page 20, it refers to the applicant supplementing their income with agricultural contracting work. Can I ask, where does the applicant park the agricultural machinery involved in the contracting work?
I don't know the answer to that question. It may well be within the papers, but you know, I don't know what the answer to that is.
It does say in the papers that there is a shed on the application site. Do I assume that the machinery is parked inside the shed?
That would be my assumption too, but I simply don't know. I can't say for certain that that's the case, but I would imagine for security purposes and proximity that would be correct, but I simply don't know the answer to the question, unfortunately.
Sorry about that. Observation of appointed officer and application agent's notice of review. Oh, sorry.
I did have another point to make from page 23. It states that with regard to a small building group, there is no clearly identifiable nucleus. It would be difficult to find a nucleus when there are only 3 dwellings. And also in relation to ribbon development, there are only 2 houses in a line. Rigfoot House is not in line with the other 2 houses. How do places such as Rigfoot ever expand if ribbon development, the stricture on ribbon development is applied every time?
Chair, just looking at the housing in the countryside supplementary guidance, which starts on page 113 of the papers. And looking at this issue has come up previously. So on page 116, you've got examples of various clusters, and these are all, you know, imaginary, fictitious places. They're not real. At the bottom left of page 116, you've got an area with a cross in it, which is considered to be unacceptable ribbon development. So you're adding on to the existing ribbon, it's expanding out the way. That's considered to be unacceptable. When you look at the bottom right case on page 116, you've got an example on the top left there, number 1, which again is considered to be unacceptable because it's expanding out the way. On the top right, item 2's got a tick next to it, primarily because it's expanding a ribbon, but it's considered to be a gap site because you've got the constraint of a road, a defensible boundary, if you like, to the group to the north of it. And on the bottom left, you've got a tick there because it's rounding off a group, so it's imagining you're providing a plot which rounds off an existing double-sided ribbon of development. In this case, I would suggest, you know, if you're looking at, you've got 2 semi-detached dwelling houses, then you've got Rigfoot House, and you've got a gap in between. I would suggest that, you know, development in between that would be consolidating, you know, what's there at the moment and wouldn't be extending a ribbon of development. But if you apply this guidance to this case and you're going beyond the existing grouping of houses, or, you know, adding on either end to the north or south, that would be, in terms of the supplementary guidance on page 116, unacceptable ribbon development.
I think page 23, paragraph 416, the last really long sentence, application site is significantly larger than the existing plots at Rigfoot and is set within an agricultural field with no clearly defensible boundaries to act as a topographical stop. So that's what it means there, that if you build a house in there, they could come along and want another house in there because there's no identifiable boundary or defensible boundary. So that's an issue that's got to be addressed as well. All right, can we go to observation of appointed officer? on the applicant's agent's notice of review, page 37 to 40. No questions? Move to comments of applicant's agents, pages 41 to 44. Planning application form for pages 45 to 96. Well, I should add that switched off. Sorry about that. Apologies. Planning application form pages 45 to 96. Any questions in that section? No. Decision letter from Dumfries and Galloway Council, page 97 to 104. Section 7, relevant extracts from Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan, pages 105 to 190. Okay, do you consider you've got enough information in front of you to make a decision on this application? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, any questions or comments you want to make on any area? Councillor Blake?
Can I ask Robert to go back to the photographs, please? It was the one off the application site looking across the word, that one there. I take it that's the application site right in front. It looks as if it's been separated off for some time. Is it?
I'm fairly sure the application site is just on the right hand side over the fence, so it's the corner part of the bigger field. If you look at the location plan on page 57, sorry, the northern edge of the application site is a continuous boundary shown with the field. So I'm taking the northern boundary of the site to be part of the existing field boundary there, so the application site is an insert within that field. So just beyond the fence there, when you look at the fence, that's the boundary of the application site, the northern boundary of it.
Right. The report does make some mention about a site already having planning permission. Could that be that site?
Well, Robert's looking, I think it could be because it's got identifiable boundaries. That's the sort of thing we're talking about. And it's closer to the house next door as well. But, Robert?
The only other applications that I'm seeing mentioned in the report are on page 17 of the appointed officer's report, 15P4290, which was refused and then went to the local review body in April 2016, and the other one was an application 15P425, erection of a dwelling house, that was withdrawn by the applicant. I'll keep on looking to see if I can see anything, but I don't see any other reference. That's okay.
Yeah, it's just on the description of a small business and what the applicant's agent says is a medium-sized business. Is, how do we assess what is small and what is medium-sized?
I would expect they would need to justify that, but how we identify different sizes, I don't know. We've got the comments from the Agricultural College as to manage staffing that's needed for that business, but how you identify medium, large and small, I don't know.
Yeah, I should have said that was on page 13, the reference to medium-sized business. And also on page 13 and page 21. Page 21, the end of the first paragraph, it says, given there is currently no full-time worker, nor any proposals to have anyone employed. And yet when you go to the applicant's agent, he says full-time labour is required on the site, and the report confirms this. And also that the fact that there are no full-time worker there just now is because there are no house available. So there's a conflict.
Thank you, Chair. At top of page 19, the MSP Oliver Mundell's support letter says the existing properties form part of a small building group. Am I right in my interpretation that it does not form part of a small building group?
I'm reading that comment as his interpretation of the policy, but it's not a small building group listed in either the local development plan or supplementary guidance. I think I'm reading that as him looking at the policy and thinking, well, it's meeting the definition of a small building group as you've got it in policy H3. So that's his view, if you like, on that one, but it isn't part of an identified small building group in the policy, no.
Right. Thank you for that. And it's interesting to know that in terms of what Councillor McComb was saying about previous planning permission, he also says there was a previous planning permission for a house adjacent to the plot.
Yes, and I think that's just the plot we were talking about, where there's an identifiable boundary. They could get a planning permission, but over the fence, there into a big field, you could fill it with houses eventually. That's the difficulty. Councillor McComb?
Chair, going back to the vacant land we see on the slide, I'm assuming that vacant land is not part of the curtilage of Rigfoot House. Is that correct?
Any knowledge of who owned that land at all, Robert?
I can't say for certain, but looking at it, it doesn't look to me like land that is used as incidental to the enjoyment of the dwelling house. It doesn't seem to have any real function relative to the occupation of the dwelling house, and the curtilage is the land which surrounds the dwelling house and which is incidental to it and accompanies it. So I don't read that as part of the curtilage of the dwelling house, no.
Chair, the vacant site, is that the one which previously had planning permission?
That's what we're assuming, because it can be, it's got an identifiable boundary, so it could get planning permission. So we assume that that is the site.
Chair, if it helps from memory in relation to the previous LRB case, this did come up, and I think at some point in time that land did have planning permission to build a house on it. But I'll look at the documents and try and see if I can find something more substantive to answer it than that.
Any other comments, questions? Are you ready to make a decision?
My concern is still the description of small or medium size. I appreciate it's somewhere around 18 acres, which doesn't seem overly large. Although my expertise in how many ewes could go into 18 is not terribly high. There is a requirement for certainly almost 0.6 of a full-time worker. And given the rural location of that area, it's maybe unreasonable that you get a part-time worker to give her 0.6 hours. That I've some sympathies with it, but I'd like to hear what the other members think.
Chair, part of the problem I have is that there are many farmers who currently supplement their income from various sources: power generation, tourism, contracting, etc. And in this case, it is clear the gentleman is going to supplement his income by contracting. Contracting equipment, to my mind, is better stored in the countryside rather than beside houses in a village. So this is quite difficult. There may only be 0.59 labour units, but it can be supported by alternative activities.
I was going to ask for guidance on the three decisions we are able to make regarding this property. What would happen if we deferred this for further information?
Could you identify what further information you want?
Thank you, Chair. For instance, we don't know the state of planning permission of that ground that we are looking at in that slide. If it has planning permission and a property was subsequently built on it, that would change the decision on what constituted a small building group.
Chair, in response to that issue, I have found something in the documentation relating to that question on page 55, and it's the applicant's agent's submission at point 7. It says planning permission for a dwelling house was granted at Rigfoot some time ago, but has now expired, which is why there's no reference to it in the officer's report. So there's no real prospect of that happening without a further application coming forward.
And at the end of the day, even if a house was built in that site, he couldn't justify one in the field because there's no identifiable boundaries. We tend to work by identifiable boundaries so that there's no ribbon development and that sort of thing, sporadic development in the countryside. So we look for identifiable boundaries, which are generally walls or hedges, that type of thing. A wire fence tends not to constitute a sustainable boundary. Is that right?
Yeah, it's just going back to the description of a small building group. I appreciate it's not registered as a small building group, but it would appear that it has the constituent dwelling houses that could be considered a small building group. I just wonder if Robin could comment on that.
Thanks, Chair. You're obviously looking here at LDP policy H3 as being relevant and looking at it in principle, so that's in page 109. So in essence, it says the Council will support housing proposals in the countryside where the proposal meets one or more of the following criteria. And you've got the first point, which says is within or well related to a small building group. And that's defined as 3 or more separate habitable or occupied houses which are well related to each other to create a sense of place. So that's what you're looking at, and that's a judgment call. You know, it doesn't need to be an identified small building group, but that is what the definition of a small building group is. So if you feel this is within or well related to a small building group, in other words, 3 or more separate habitable or occupied houses which are well related to each other to create a sense of place, then you could view that as complying with policy. That's not the view of the appointed officer, but you know, that's
the same policy also states that the second bullet point is essential for the needs of agriculture. and this was the discussion we were having about 0.59, but I still feel that given the rural location of that, to try and get a part-time worker, I think that we should give some weight to that.
Between 75 and 91, there's various pictures there showing outbuildings where it would appear that it may be keeping well, he's got tractors sitting there, and it may be that they're kept close to that building as well. He's also got sheep inside a building. So, quite difficult, but I think the justification for the house I would find difficult to grant. With all due respect, I think that the siting of the house is not appropriate. There's no, as I said, already identifiable boundaries, and that's the big issue. Councillor Young.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. With all respect, I would say the key aspect to this is whether we deem it to be essential for the needs of agriculture or other business requiring a rural location. One of the council priorities is to grow the economy. This planning permission will help to grow the economy, so I'm tending to look at that as the key policy.
Would that be a satisfactory reason?
Yes, as Councillor Blake pointed out, in this case you're looking at principally 2 points of policy H3, looking at the principle of the development. I'm just trying to find the place in the papers where it has the policy. Just excuse me for a few seconds. Yeah, I found it now. So you've got the first point about the small building groups, which we've just been over. There is also guidance in the supplementary guidance note on housing development in the countryside. So that's pages 115 and 117. So if members need to get more advice on the small building group issue, then it's there. The second bullet point, policy H3, is as an alternative to that, and sometimes you will get cases that maybe meet 2 or more points. It is essential for the needs of agriculture or other business requiring a rural location that cannot be met in a nearby settlement. So that's the second point. So if you think in this case that does apply to this, then it gives you a point of H3 that means that the proposal would comply in principle with policy H3.
Sorry, Councillor Blake.
Yeah, bearing in mind what Robert's just said there, and I too feel that this policy does comply with the policy on 2 points. One, the fact that it could be considered well related to small building group, and secondly, because of the rural location of the business, that is essential for the needs of agriculture. Giving in mind that it is, we're talking about it should have up to 150 ewes and going through lambing times. I think when you also see the photographs, there are a caravan on site, and I've no doubt that's probably there for that purpose. So I'd be quite happy to approve this.
The only other thing I would suggest maybe is that we refuse this, but suggest to them that they look for a site closer to the farm buildings and make it more appropriate that way. I don't know whether that would be acceptable, Robert, would it?
You can do that, Chair. You can, uphold or vary the appointed officer's decision if you like. You can put a note in there to suggest an alternative, but obviously what you can't do, and you would need to stop short of doing, is indicating that somehow predetermining any application that comes in. But yeah, certainly you could do that if that's what you want to communicate. Then you could do that by means of a note to the decision, yeah.
Councillor McComb.
Thanks, Chair. I'm looking at the photograph on page 81, which shows an agricultural building, agricultural machinery, and a caravan. Clearly, there are times of the year when it is essential to be living there, certainly during the lambing season. And I would be inclined, rather than have a caravan, to have a house there. That would be my view. Also, it would be beneficial in terms of security to have your machinery under close supervision.
Are you suggesting an alternative site closer to the buildings rather than at the other side of the farm?
No, Chair. I would go with the application as submitted.
Anybody else otherwise minded? Or do you want to go down the road of accepting the application? Agreeing the application?
Yeah, personally, I would support the application, the report, and also on the grounds of the first two bullet points in policy H3.
I would second that. I would also support the application.
Yep. Well, obviously, I'm of the alternative view, but Councillor McCobb?
I would go with the motion Councillor Blake has just proposed.
Thank you.
Chair, it's just a point of clarification, really. I'm hearing, obviously, that the majority of LRB members want to vary the terms of the decision such that you're going to grant permission in principle for this development. Now, in doing that, I just want to be clear at the moment about the conditions that would be attached to that. As a permission in principle, it's only covering, as you'd expect, the principle of the development and not any details at this stage. So we would normally put a further condition on requiring the submission of further details and 4 conditions covering the whole range of things you would expect with dwelling houses: siting, design, access, landscaping, etc., etc. So those would require to be the subject of a further application. In addition to which, we've got various consultation responses within the papers relating to this application. Now, I'll try and get the page reference for that. It's, for example, you've got the comments of the Council's Roads Officer on pages 35 to 36, and that contains 5 recommended conditions. It's obviously up to local review body members, but I would suggest that if you're minded to grant permission in principle today, you do so subject to the conditions I've mentioned. There'll be 5 of those requiring further detail, and also the roads conditions that are on pages 35 to 36, to include those as well.
I think they were identifying the road from the house would go down to the farm buildings, wouldn't it? Wasn't it access direct onto the B722?
Yes, it's just given a range of recommended conditions. For example, the driveway would be trapped and drained, the access gradient would be limited to 8% or 1 in 12.5. The access layout would need to be of a certain criteria with various geometry, 3.5 radius curves. They would need to surface the vehicle access for the first 5 metres. There'd be a requirement for parking and turning. So these are fairly standard, none of them are unduly onerous.
Councillor Blake?
Yeah, I'm quite happy with these conditions. Will there be a Section 75 agreement on this being attached, being part of the
I noticed Section 75 are no longer...
No, to the equivalent.
No, they are no longer in operation. I think we could do an identifiable boundary around it as well, but Robert, do you want to comment on that?
It's entirely up to yourself. If you want to put a condition restricting occupancy to the applicants or managers or full-time employees of the associated business, then you can do that. It wouldn't be our practice now to impose a Section 75 legal obligation, no. But with regard to the condition, it's up to yourself. If you didn't put that condition on, then it could be occupied by any party. The one about the boundary, the boundary of the development would be, it's just a permission in principle application, so you're looking at that parcel of land. If it's granted permission in principle, that's the area that's acceptable for development. The conditions requiring further detail would include boundary treatment as well. So, for example, that would need to be firmed up. At this location, you would probably be looking for something representative of the character of the area, maybe dry stone dikes, hedges, something like that to soften the impact. So that would be something that would be looked at when that detail came in.
Chairman, just given the fact that one of the main reasons that we're going down the line to approve this is that it's relationship to there's necessity for the business. I just wonder if that condition should be in to limit it to be as part of the business, so it can't be sold off separately.
Chair, it's up to yourself as local review body if you want to impose that condition. The point made is right. If you don't put that condition on, then you can't restrict the occupancy of it. It could be sold in the open market, occupied by any party. We could word a condition such that it would restrict the occupation. You would maybe need to think carefully about who that would be. For example, would it be full or part-time employees of the associated business, if that's what you're seeking to do, and obviously dependents of such persons, because you're going to have spouses, children, etc., that don't necessarily, derive a direct income from the business. But we've done conditions like that before, so if you want to impose a condition like that and just restrict occupancy to an employee of that business and their dependents, then we can certainly do that.
I think in this case I would be happier if that was applied. I don't know about other members.
Yeah, it should be tied to the site, and I think that's right. You agree with that, Councillor Young? Okay, Robert, you'll work that out for Claire, will you? Claire, work it out for you.
So I'll tell you what I've got. I've got the local review body agreeing to reverse the decision of the appointed officer and approve planning permission in principle for the erection of a dwelling house at Northcraig Farm, Waterbeck, on the grounds that it is compliant with policy H3, meeting the first two bullet points, as we've stated, subject to conditions that further detail will be provided in the future application. Those conditions will be picked up as stated in page 35 and 36 of the papers, and he was also putting on a restriction, a condition that would restrict the occupancy, that would link it to the business, full or part-time employees of the business and their dependents.
Oh, thank you for that, Claire. Right, can we now move to notice of review, refusal of planning permission for formation of box dormer and rear elevation of dwelling house, 29 Hardthorn Avenue, Dumfries. Planning reference number 17/1398/FUL, page 191. Claire?
Yeah, thank you. Again, you've got your usual documents in your papers, being your notice of review, report of handling, observations of the appointed officer, comments of the applicant's agent, the planning application form, the decision notice, the relevant extracts of the LDP and the photos of the application site. The grounds of refusal in this case are on page 256, being the massing, scale and design of the dormer fails to preserve or enhance the scale and character of the existing dwelling house and would be contrary to Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan Policy H8 and supplementary guidance, alterations and extensions to houses. The requested method of determination is on page 200, being the applicant has requested that the review be dealt with on the basis of review of the information provided without any further procedure. You have the grounds stated in the notice of review, being in summary, the appointed officer has not assessed the application with common sense and has just referred to guidelines as a tick box refusal exercise. The dormer extension was intended to provide additional useful living space at first floor level for an expanding family in order to provide self-contained accommodation at ground floor level to cater for a disabled family member. Common sense must prevail as the dwelling is located in a residential suburb with no design merit requirement. Although box dormers are not a common feature in this vicinity, they are not an uncommon feature within the town and do feature in much more sensitive locations, both in other suburbs and within the town centre. 3 generations of the same family are accommodated within the property, and it is noble that the younger generation are trying to take an element of care of a less able member of the family, rather than rely on other assistance in this climate of cuts to the welfare state. To accommodate the planning officer request to address the massing, the applicant has tried to reduce the size of the dormer, which would be at some detriment to the overall objective of the proposals, and the applicant's agent considers that the development does not now dominate or overwhelm. It must be seen for what it is within an understanding of what the applicant is trying to achieve. If the further comments of interested parties, being the comments of the appointed officer, the applicant's agent, the relevant development plan policies. So the main issues for the LRB to consider are: does the proposal conform with the relevant development plan policies, and critically, does it comply with local development plan policies OP1 and H8 and the associated supplementary guidance on alterations and extensions to houses? Specifically, would the proposed dormer, by virtue of its massing, scale and design in combination, fail to preserve or enhance the scale and character of the existing dwelling house? If it is considered that the proposal does not comply with the terms of the development plan, or there any other material considerations which would indicate that planning permission should be granted as an exception to policy? And how much weight would members wish to give to the fact that it has been provided by the applicant's agent the proposed dormer has been proposed to enhance the living circumstances of a disabled family member resident here? It was noted that this was not something provided and therefore not taken into account when the application was determined by the appointed officer. So again, having outlined the documents in your papers, it is for the LRP to decide whether it has sufficient information, and again, go through the papers.
Thank you, Chair. Robert, can you show us the photographs, please?
Yes, certainly, Chair. These again are replicating the pictures that appear within the papers. You're looking at the pictures on pages 277 to 281. Thanks, Chair. Best reference point in terms of the plans are probably on page 239. You've got the block plan and location plan. If you rotate that 90 degrees left, it just orientates both maps left, so that shows everything surrounding the development site. This is a view from Hardthorn Avenue. It's looking straight to the application site. As you can see, it's a hip roof single storey house with a box dormer on the front elevation. This is a view looking south along Hardthorn Avenue. You can see the dwelling house itself, which is the subject of the application, just behind the lamppost there in the middle ground. So most of the houses here have full gables rather than hip roofs. It's a view towards Hardthorn Crescent showing a nearby box dormer. So you've got the host dwelling house, subject of the application there. The box dormer, the other one, is there again. It's another hip roof house. This is a view looking from within the rear garden at the extent of the rear roof space. So in terms of the proposal, probably the best reference is on page 249 and also the plans on page 251. Now, what these show in the side elevation, you can see the existing dormer in the front elevation, just to give it a scale reference, protruding at the moment, so that's at the foot of page 249. On the left hand side you have the proposed dormer, so this is to the rear of the dwelling house, and it's obviously a deeper, larger dormer than the one you have existing on the front of the dwelling house. So that's the proposal. When you look at it in a straight on view of the rear elevation at the top of page 249, you can see what the proposed dormer would look like. So it's proposed on the rear elevation. This is a view looking from within the rear garden area at present, and that's at the neighbouring properties to the southwest. So your best reference point for that in terms of the plans will be the block plan on the left hand side of page 239 after it's been rotated. So this is to the southwest, so this is looking at number 2 Babington Gardens on the left hand side there. This describes it as more to the northwest. I'm not convinced about that. This is still looking towards the rear of the houses on Babington Gardens. It's more a westerly view, if anything. The other points, Chair, again, you've had the recent decision, as I referenced in relation to the previous item about the proposed LDP at full council. I won't go over that again, but in terms of the development plan policies relevant to this case, you've got the two changes I mentioned previously to policy OP1, which is applicable. So that's the change to the first paragraph and also the expanded point F in sustainability. In this case, your key policy I would suggest is policy H8, and there has been a change to that policy which is very straightforward. So if you look at that as it stands at the moment in the LDP, it's on page 264. The change is very simple. It says at the moment alterations and extensions to dwelling houses, and it says will be supported where you've got the listed bullet points. The proposed change is simply to rephrase that as alterations and extensions to dwellings will be supported rather than dwelling houses. The simple reason for that is so that it's applicable to flats as well as dwelling houses. So no real change there in comparison between the two plans, I would suggest.
Keep forgetting that. Report on handling, page 203 to 222. Observations of the appointed officer on the applicant's agent's notice of review and further comments from interested parties, page 223 to 226. Oh, sorry, Councillor McComb.
Thank you, Chair. I assume the appointed officer took no part in the determination of the recommendation. It's simply the fact that I noticed the appointed officer's name at the bottom of the preceding letter.
For the avoidance of doubt, Chair, the appointed officer for this case is Jessica Taylor, who's the team leader for the minor enforcement team. Now, within that, you've got Beth Halliday, who's acted as case officer. So in this case, Beth has determined the case, produced a report, then run it past Jessica, but Jessica has approved it, if you like, made the decision as the team leader. So she is the appointed officer for the purposes of this case, but not the case officer, if you like, that deals with it.
Thank you. So Beth Halliday was the case officer. Thank you.
Yes, that's correct.
Observation of the appointed officer on the applicant's agent's notice of review and further comments, page 223 to 226. Comments on the applicant's agents and observations of the appointed officer, 227 to 230. Planning application form, page 231 to 252. Councillor Blake.
Your mic's on, Chair.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. It's relating to the map, the plan, I should say, on page 241. We earlier heard that the reason for the conversion was partly because of a disabled person going to be using a self-contained downstairs. And when you look in the map, it looks like a standard layout, and I don't see how that. I mean, it's not increasing the footprint of downstairs. So I just wonder how we can make reference to the fact that that's part of the the reason. I think if you go back to page 199 on the agent's comments, in order to provide self-contained accommodation on the ground floor, that is there just now, so I don't see what the difference would be.
Page 243, it shows you 2 bedrooms up the stairs. So it's now a 4-bedroom house as against a 2-bedroom house, which it originally was.
Chair, if it helps, it's a slightly difficult issue because it's something that's been introduced and it wasn't in front of the appointed officer, so it's not really something that's been assessed fully by the appointed officer in this case. The only thing I can assume is if you're converting the downstairs to create specific accommodation for a disabled person, maybe the proposal is to substitute existing bedrooms that have been used on the ground floor to move them up the stairs, and the dormer is expanding one of those bedrooms to create the additional space. It's the only way I can see it, because obviously the existing dormer isn't going to do anything to help ground floor accommodation other than provide a substitute space.
Young?
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarification, I'm wondering if the officer knows if the front dormers was part of the original construction or was an addition at some later stage. I know it's not relevant to planning.
I wouldn't have thought so, but Robert, do you want to comment?
I don't think it would be, but that's just my assumption. I can't say for sure.
Generally, these are bungalows, and they don't have the dormer windows. The dormers are something that's added later on, and that's the only I can assume. Yeah.
So, if you look at page the plan on page 243, I assume that represents the upstairs layout as it is just now, which shows that it does have 2 bedrooms. That on page 245, it shows what the dormer would give would actually be yet another bedroom plus an ensuite, making it a 5-bedroom house.
That's right. On page 243, you can see the 3 windows of the dormer on the right-hand side of that plan. So you've got one lighting one bedroom, one lighting the stairwell, and one lighting the other bedroom at the front there, just on the right-hand side. So you've got 2 bedrooms at present and the stairwell. The proposed dormer, if you look on page 245, as Councillor Blake says, it's giving extra accommodation. It's giving you an extra bedroom and an ensuite bathroom to one of the other bedrooms that's there at the moment. So it's allowing you 3 bedrooms and an ensuite bathroom up the stairs.
Relevant extracts from Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 261 to 276, and photos page 277 to 281. Are you happy that you've got sufficient information in front of you to make a decision? Councillor Young?
Thank you. Just my interpretation of page 272, and where there's to my mind, a key diagram. And although this box dormer extension does not use the full height of the roof, as is shown in the diagram in the middle of the page 272, it does take up the full width of the house. And box dormers constructed using the full width of the roof will not be permitted due to their bulky appearance. 3.20. Is my interpretation correct there? Can I ask the officer?
It's slightly unusual because it's a hip roof arrangement, obviously, so it can't extend the full width of the actual dwelling house, because you've only got a usable amount of headroom within a hip roof. What I would say, obviously, the key plan for me that's been submitted by the applicant is on page 245. So what they're proposing, there's only so much usable space for people you're going to get in the roof space, and you can see that at the moment with the 2 bedrooms. I think that would be reasonable. It's got a headroom, usable headroom there for that. So I would suggest it's falling slightly short of the maximum width available to extend, but not by much. You know, it's maybe about half a metre to a metre short of extending the full width of the existing space you've got on the roof. But it's pretty much a full width box dormer in comparison to the existing usable space up the stairs.
Okay, do you consider you've got sufficient information to be able to make a decision on this matter? Okay. Okay, gentlemen, any comments, queries you want to raise?
I would agree with the officer's recommendation on page 207 for the massing, scale and design of the form dorm.
Councillor McComb?
Chair, I would be inclined to agree that the scale and massing is just too big. And I would support Councillor Blake.
Fine, thank you. Councillor Young?
Sorry, I would agree with both Councillor Blake and the other councillor, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a unanimous decision, Claire.
Okay, so the local review body are agreeing to uphold the decision of the appointed officer and refuse the application for planning permission at 29 Hardthorn Avenue, Dumfries, for the formation of a box dormer and real elevation of dwelling house for the same reasons as stated in the papers.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we now move to item 6, notice of review, refusal of planning permission for installation of 9 replacement windows. Oh, Councillor McComb's going away home. Lucky. Sorry, Councillor. Refusal of planning permission for installation of 9 replacement windows with double glazed UPVC at 10 Agnew Street, Agnew Crescent, Wigtown. Planning reference number 17/1131/FUL. Notice, Claire, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Again, you've got the usual contents, notice of review, report and handling, the observation of the appointed officer, planning application form, your decision notice, the relevant extracts from the LTP and the photos of the application site and locality. The grounds of refusal in this case are the proposed windows are contrary to Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan policies HE1 and HE2 on the grounds that the use of modern UPVC windows along with the detailing and design are unsympathetic and damaging to the historic character and appearance of the listed building and conservation area and do not contribute to the building's listing. The requested method of determination is the applicant has requested that the review be dealt with on the basis of an inspection of the land to which the review relates. The grounds in the notice of review are in summary. The applicant's agent has provided that the application was refused for the proposed use of UPVC. However, there are quite a few examples of these windows already in the area. Proposed windows would not detract from any further from the character of the conservation area. You have the further comments of interested parties, be the comments of the appointed officer, and you have the relevant development plan policies. So the main issues for the local review body to consider are: does the proposal conform with the relevant development plan policies, and critically, does it comply with local development plan policies HE1 and HE2? Specifically, would the proposed windows, by virtue of their UPVC construction and their detailing and design, be unsympathetic and damaging to the historic character and appearance of this listed building? Further, would the proposed windows, by virtue of their UPVC construction and their detailing and design, be unsympathetic and damaging to the Wigtown outstanding conservation area? And would the proposed windows fail to contribute to the building's listing? If the proposal does not comply with the terms of the development plan, are there any other material considerations which would indicate that planning permission should be granted as an exception to policy? And we also have some additional information that on Wednesday, 24th of January this year, the Planning Permission Appeal, DPEA reference LBA 1702010, against the refusal of listing building consent for the installation of 9 placement windows with double glazed UPVC at this property was dismissed, and listing building consent was therefore refused. In arriving at this decision, the report concluded that the proposed windows would seriously detract from the listed building and fail to preserve the character and appearance of the Wigtown conservation area, contrary to LDP policies HE1 and HE2 and the HES guidance on managing the historic environment. It should be noted that whilst the LRB members are not bound by this decision, in practical terms it does mean it would be impossible to implement the proposal even if it were to receive planning permission without it representing a breach of listed building control. In this respect, it should be noted that it is an offence to alter a listed building in a manner such as this and would affect its character unless the works are authorised. So, again, having outlined the documents and the members' papers, it now falls to the LRB firstly to consider whether it has sufficient information to consider the review. You've got the same procedures available to you as outlined earlier, and I'll hand over to you, Chair, to lead through the papers.
Thanks very much, Claire. Robert, on that letter it says contrary to the LDP policy HE1 and HE2, does the LDP policy say they can put plastic windows in those houses?
Chair, that's the basis upon which the reporter took the listed building consent appeal decision on behalf of Scottish ministers. So in his view, it was contrary to both of those policies, and they appear in the papers. I'm trying to find the page. HE1's on 347. So he felt the proposal was contrary to that, and also on page 348 of the papers, he also felt it was contrary to policy HE2 in conservation areas. Now, he made that decision relative to a listed building consent application. This is in relation to a planning application for the same proposal, but you've got a planning application running alongside the listed building consent here. The slight anomaly is that the Scottish ministers retain control of the appeal process in respect of listed buildings, but for delegated, applications dealt with by officers, appointed officers, where they're planning applications, the route in a case like this is the local review body. So you end up with the local review body dealing with the planning application and the Scottish Ministers' Reporters Unit dealing with the listed building consent appeal. The advantage in this case, and this is hot off the press, we've got a decision on the listed building consent appeal this week before the meeting today, which is quite handy. But obviously we need to bring you up to date on these things.
That's right. I know that previously we've spoken about this in the distant past, that where a listed building may have changed its windows, but it wasn't under the new regulations which banned the use of UPVC windows. But when if they came back to change those windows, they had to get back to revert to the wooden type of window that was there originally. That was an issue. Councillor Blake.
Just a couple of points. Robert, could you explain the position with the listed building consent, where that went, who made that decision for it to go to an appeal? And secondly, we fairly recently had an LRB where we actually had a site visit to a conservation area, and we approved a retrospective permission on UPVC windows.
Quite happy to clarify those points. Both of these decisions, there's a listed building consent application because it's a listed building. You need listed building consent to change anything about the property that would change its character or appearance. So that application has to be made and you have to get consent for that. So it's a separate process. It runs alongside the planning application. Both of these decisions were made by the appointed officer under delegated powers, so they didn't have to go to committee. Now, the difference then becomes if a third party wants to effectively appeal against either or both of those decisions, they've got to do so within 3 months. But for an application of that nature, the planning appeal route, if you like, is to the council's local review body, which is obviously why we're here today. in respect of any listed building consent refusal, the right remains for them to go to Scottish ministers with it. So they submit a separate appeal to Scottish ministers as well as go to the local review body. It's then allocated to a reporter, the Scottish Government Department of Environmental Reviews and Appeals deals with that. They allocate it to a reporter. The reporter makes the decision on behalf of Scottish ministers. So that's what's happened in this case. The difficulty is you've essentially got the same thing. Two different applications, one of which is dealt with by Scottish ministers and one of which is dealt with by the council when it comes to the appeal process. So you can end up with different results. We're slightly lucky that we've had the decision on the listed building consent application before the decision today, because it's helpful to know the case in Lochmaben, the retrospective application for windows was on a house, so it was just a planning application, which made it easier because the decision of the local review body was the only decision that mattered in that case, if you like, for them to go ahead. It wasn't a listed building, so we didn't have the complication of a listed building consent application or an appeal to the Scottish ministers.
Yes, I forgot. Actually, my memory was it was a listed building, but I think you're quite right, it wasn't. If we go to another area, then if we go to Kirkcudbright, where we approved almost 200 UPVC windows in a listed building in a conservation area. What was the position? I appreciate it's not this one, but it's all part of the learning process with us. How did that? Was it granted listed building consent?
The Atkinson Place case that you're talking about in Kirkcudbright, as I understand it, was granted planning permission and listed building consent, contrary to officer recommendation, which is fine. That's within the gift of the committee of the council. In a case like that, there obviously there is still a right of appeal against any conditions if the applicant doesn't like them. But obviously they decided not to exercise it in that case. It's usually if people get refused permission or listed building consent that they'll appeal it. So we never had an appeal about that one, but if they'd wanted to appeal the listed building consent conditions, for example, they would have gone to Scottish ministers, and if it was otherwise, if it had been a delegated case, it would have been here, but it was a committee decision. So in that case, if you've got a planning application that's a committee decision, it still goes up to Scottish ministers. It's only the cases that are delegated to the appointed officers that are for planning applications that come before the local review body, as long as they're not major development. So there is a difference there, yeah.
Go through the photographs, please, Robert.
Certainly, Chair. These again, they're just replicating the pictures as they appear in the papers on pages 415 to 422. So this is an aerial view. It shows Agnew Crescent. This is within the light red cross-hatched area. You can see the boundary line in a darker red on the right-hand side there. That shows the boundary of the Wigtown Conservation Area. So we're within the conservation area as per the report. You've got the property itself outlined in red. So that is the application site. That's the building there, and it's obviously got a rear curtilage too, you can see on the right-hand side. The green and the blue demarcations, the green indicates category C listed buildings, and the blue one you can see outlined is a category B listed building. So you would expect this kind of thing in a conservation area. The existing front elevation of the dwelling house is as so it's a terraced single-storey dwelling house with accommodation in the roof space. You've got existing windows in the front elevation, so this is a view showing simply what the baseline position is. And then you've got the existing rear elevation, which is facing in an easterly direction. So you can see they look like flat roof dormers at the first floor level, but the window they are facing towards us is existing. Then you have another one up at the higher level.
What about that dormer?
The dormer is just an existing feature. I don't know the history of it, but
Would that be affected by this?
I don't think it's affected by the application.
It could stay as it is.
I think so.
That my fear would be it's plastic wood that's round about it as well, but that's a different issue.
I think it's either plastic or stayed timber, one of the two.
Yeah.
You've got this is on the rear projection, So to the left, if you like, and to the rear of this picture. You've then got that on the end of the gable. And then you've got another window there you can see at the ground floor level as well. That's a closer view of the one you saw earlier. And the existing window on the rear elevation just on the right hand side there next to the door. And that's showing 2 openings there which have existing windows.
This application doesn't relate to the door either, does it? As well.
No, just for avoidance of doubt, it's just for the 9 windows as proposed. I mean, the actual submission is shown on pages 315 to 334, but we'll come on to that. Points for noting again, the proposed LDP decision by full council introduces a new material consideration as per the previous 2 cases. Relevant policies here, OP1, well, we've covered the changes to that already. OP2 that's relevant, there's no change in content. Policy H8 is applicable here. We've got a change from dwelling houses to dwellings, simply so that it encompasses flats as well. HE1, policy HE1 is quite key to this case. So looking at the existing version of that policy as it is in the LDP, which remains, there's the addition of a paragraph at the end of point A. So if you look on page 347, you've got A, alterations, and then you've got 3 bullet points. The proposed LDP retains the start of that and the 3 bullet points, but it does introduce a paragraph just after them which says, if I can find it, proposals to extend or alter a listed building should include written justification demonstrating a full and proper understanding of the character and special interest of the building. The other changes to policy HE1 are at point B of the existing LDP policy, which appears in 347. The proposed LDP simply changes the reference to HES policy statement June 2016 instead of Scottish Historic Environment Policy, because that's been superseded, so it's just really to bring it up to date. It doesn't really change anything apart from the cross-reference document. The final paragraph of HE1 on page 348 when it looks at recording schemes, it says this policy is supported by supplementary guidance. That's now been changed to the Historic Built Environment Supplementary Guidance provides further information to help design and assess alterations or extensions and record the existing fabric. So in all other respects, HE1 remains the same. So you're talking fairly minor changes. Turning to policy HE2, the conservation areas policy on page 348, you've got the existing LDP version there, which is still the development plan. The proposed LDP deletes point 4 relating to trees. So that comes out of the proposed LDP, and instead you've got a final amended paragraph. So where it says this policy is supported by supplementary guidance in the existing LDP and the proposed LDP, it changes that to the Historic Built Environment Supplementary Guidance and individual conservation area character appraisals and management plans provide further advice regarding development proposals in conservation areas. But other than that, there's no change between the relevant policies between the existing LDP and the proposed LDP. The only final point is the decision notice. This is just really for noting. The decision notice on page 338 is an amended version. I'm grateful to Tracy Sonko for spotting that the original version issued didn't actually have a reason in it. And that was the version that initially appeared in the papers. But because it was spotted, we managed to replace it with a version that was an update to the original. The applicant's submission included the original version, which didn't have a reason for the decision, which wasn't particularly helpful, but we did have the report on handling to fall back on. So it was clearly just a mistake that had been made at that time, but it's been rectified. It's just for the avoidance of doubt.
Good, thank you very much. Right, we'll make a start. Notice of review, pages 283 to 294. Report on handling, page 295 to 310. Observations of the appointed officer, pages 311 to 314. That's page 313, paragraph 2. The applicant's statement of reasons. They state the application was refused for a proposed use of PVCU. However, there are quite a few examples of them windows already in the area, so we would argue the proposed windows would not detract any further from the character of the conservation area. But I think that's been addressed already. Planning application form, pages 315 to 334. Robert.
Chair, it was just to clarify a point that came up earlier in the presentation, and I wasn't sure. If members are able to look at page 329 and move that 90, rotate it 90 degrees, for the avoidance of doubt, there are proposed new windows to those upper dormers. You've got the lower elevations showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9, which are the numbers of the windows that are proposed to be changed. So it does include those dormer windows, just to be clear.
Again, relevant extracts from Dumfries and Galloway local plan, pages 343 to 414. And photos of the application site and locality, which we've already seen. Do you consider you've got sufficient information to be able to make a decision? Put your microphone on, Councillor Young, when he says that.
Yes, I believe we have sufficient information to make a decision. Thank you.
You're watching me too much. Councillor Blake, are you quite happy with sufficient information?
Yes,
Any issues you wish to raise?
I think really our hands are almost tied with this, with the decision on the listed building. Consent.
Councillor Young, are you quite happy to go with that?
I'm quite happy to go with the officer's recommendations.
Yeah, thank you very much. So that's a unanimous decision again. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm that the LRB have decided to uphold the decision of the appointed officer and refuse the planning permission for the same reasons as stated in the papers.
Tracy. Oh no. Here it comes. Just sit still, Tracy. Thank you. Okay, members, go to item 7, notice of review, refusal of planning permission in principle for erection of dwelling house at Hazelbank Farm, Boreland, Lockerbie. Planning reference number 17/1191/PIP.
Thank you, Chair. Again, you've got the usual papers in your pack. Notice of review, report and handling, observation of appointed officer, comments of the applicant's agent, the planning application form, decision notice and relevant extracts of the LDP and photos of the application site and locality. The grounds of refusal in this case are that it is not being satisfactorily demonstrated that a new dwelling house is essential at this location for the needs of the agricultural operations of the farming business, in addition to the existing house, Hazelbank, on the farming unit, and that none of the other housing and the countryside opportunities are available, and accordingly the proposal is contrary to the policy of the Council as stated in Local Development Plan Policy H3 and to national policy as set out in Scottish planning policy, which permit the erection of new houses in the countryside only in special circumstances identified in development plans, and none of these circumstances apply in this case. The requested method of determination is that the applicant's agent has requested that the review be dealt with on the basis of one or more hearing sessions and by the means of site inspection. The applicant's agent has stated that this request would enable the LRB members to acquaint themselves with the isolated location of Hazelbank Farm and also inspect the new and refurnished farm buildings at the site. The applicant's agent has also asked for a letter from the President of NFU Scotland dated 15th of September 2017 to be included as part of this determination on the basis that this letter was not available when the original submission was made. For the avoidance of doubt, this piece of information was not in front of the appointed officer when the application was determined on the 20th of September 2017. So the grounds stated in the notice of review are in summary. The applicant's agent has stated that the distance from the farm to the nearest settlement is 6.8 kilometres and any available property in the settlement is too remote from the farm, and this is accepted within 4.7 of the delegated report. The applicant's agent has also stated that the considerable and very recent and current expenditure providing large new agricultural buildings and the refurbishment of the existing buildings confirms that this is a viable farming operation and will continue to be so. The applicant's agent has stated that there is an agricultural need for a dwelling house at this location to support this rural business, and as farming is a significant component of the rural economy, it's important that planning policy continues to support the needs of farming enterprises. That has been demonstrated through the labour requirement report, and that a house is essential in this case. The submissions confirm that a house is essential, and why the officer continually refers to desirable is very strange, misleading and unacceptable. The term desirable should be disregarded. The applicant's agent has stated that the considerable expense of the region of 175k has been invested in the extensive pasture improvements, including lime, reseeding, grassland management and fencing and hedging over the length of 5 kilometres, and this again confirms that this is a viable large-scale farming operation. Stock has been increased since the labour requirement report was prepared, with the cattle numbers increasing by 10, reaching a total of 100, and the sheep numbers have been increased by a further 50, bringing the current total to 700. The labour requirement report provides accurate information at the time of preparation, and to suggest that increases in stock referred to should be disregarded as not acceptable, as any increase in stock requires additional handling, care and attention. The applicant's agent has stated that with regard to paragraph 4.11 of the report of handling, it is impossible for the owners to be resident on the farm, as the only house on the farm is occupied by the stockman and there is no other accommodation available to the owners. The tenancy at White Castles was for a period of 15 years and had to be vacated by the tenants in accordance with terms of the rental agreement. The applicant's agent has stated that with regard to paragraph 4.6 of the report of handling, the farming operation has not been reduced in size. White Castles and Hazelbank are operated as two separate farms, and in fact there has been a considerable increase in the farming operation at Hazelbank, and the supporting documents confirm this. The applicant agent has stated that with regard to paragraph 4.14 of the report of handling, the only dwelling house on the farm was occupied by the stockman and his wife, and the suggestion the owners also reside in a small 2-bedroom house and possibly extend it along with the stockman and wife is unbelievable. This would mean the stockman and his wife would need to vacate the property. The applicant's agent has stated that with regard to paragraph 4.14, the report of handling, the only dwelling house on the farm is occupied by the stockman and his wife, and the suggestion the owners also the applicant's agent has provided that the efficiency of the farming operation will suffer if the applicants not resident on the farm, as increase in stock and buildings require additional management and care. You have the further comments of the interested parties, being the comments of the appointed officer, comments of the applicant's agent. You have the relevant development plan policies, So the main issues for the LRB to consider, again, does the proposal conform with the relevant development plan policies, and critically, does it comply with LDP policy H3 and the associated supplementary guidance on housing in the countryside? Specifically, has it been satisfactorily demonstrated that the proposed new dwelling house is essential at its location for the operational needs of the associated agricultural business? Would the dwelling house be well related to a small building group? Would it meet the terms of policy H3 and the associated supplementary guidance on housing in the countryside in any other way? Pages 5 and 6 of the supplementary guidance contain specific guidance to claimed agricultural or rural business need. If it's considered that the proposal does not conform with the terms of the development plan, are there any other material considerations which would indicate that planning permission should be granted as an exception to policy? So again, having outlined the papers, it now falls to the LRB to firstly decide whether it has sufficient information to consider the review, and I'll hand over to the Chair to lead you through the papers.
Thank you, Claire. Robert, you want to go through the LDP and then photographs, please?
Chair, I'm quite happy to go through the photographs. This is the existing dwelling house, Hazelbank. I haven't been to this application site, so I'm just relying on the officer's pictures entirely. This is a view panning right from this previous photograph. So you can see the building there, just on the right-hand side. That's at the left-hand side of this one. So it's right from the previous photograph. Shows the existing steading at Hazelbank. This is going further round to the right from the previous photograph, showing the existing steading. Pointed officers pointed out there's been no planning history found for the shed on the right-hand side there, just for the avoidance of doubt. That's referenced in the materials in front of you. This is a view again panning further round to the right from the previous photograph, again to demonstrate the existing steading. And again from previous, this is the shed as approved under 14D40007, which is a determination of prior approval application. The application site is on the right-hand side of this, and this is a view looking towards the agricultural building under construction in Old Sheepfold, with the access road for the new dwelling house off this track through the field. And there's notes there about a determination of prior approval application in respect to that and the variance of it. It's a view panning right from the previous photograph with the house site on the hillside behind that fancy there you can see in the middle ground. That's a view taken from the site of the proposed dwelling house towards the new shed. So that's the one you can see 2 photographs back, slightly elevated position. So that's from the application site looking towards the shed. This is a view panning left from the previous photograph. Again, it's a proposed dwelling house site with the proposed access track formed within the centre of this view. And I'm assuming that is on a similar location, so you can see the vehicle tracks there coming up, but they're very faint. That's a view panning left from the previous photographs, so you're now looking again towards Hazelbank and the associated steading group, which you saw closer up in the earlier pictures. And there's obviously some mature tree cover there as well. That's panning left from the previous photographs at the site of the proposed dwelling house towards the existing dwelling house itself. So you can see it set down there with the dormer windows, and then the steading building starting just there. So this is from the site of the proposed dwelling house towards the existing. So this is panning round to the left from this picture. We've got a close-up view here of the fence line in the paddock, which would be between the existing dwelling house and the proposed dwelling house site. There's quite a degree of separation there. And this is again just turning around, looking at the application site, looking up the field, and just showing the nature of the ground. It's sloping, it's elevated, and it's set back from Hazelbank Farm itself. In relation to the proposed LDP, you're just basically looking at the update as you got for item 4, because all of the relevant policies are the same in this case as they were for item 4.
Thank you very much, Robert. Notice of review. How do I go through this? Refusal of planning permission in principle, erection of dwelling house, Hazelbank Farm, Boreland, Lockerbie. Planning reference 17/1191/PIP. Notice of review, pages 423 to 442. Just draw your attention to a letter from Mr. McCall to Mr. Hanna asking that we arrange for a site visit. But I would leave that decision until after we've been through the papers. You can decide then whether you've got sufficient information or whether you think a site visit would benefit you. No questions? Section 2, report on handling, pages 443 to 460. There's page 446, 2.1 advises Roads Annandale, Nestdale advises this application for erection of a dwelling house at Hazelbank Farm, Lockerbie. Development of this site was previously considered and refused under 16/B/4/0141. Roads comments remain unchanged. Access to the proposed dwelling is to be taken via an existing private access way from the U287A public road at Hazelbank Farm. Again, page 449, 4.9, applicant's agent also argues there's an essential need for a dwelling house at Hazelbank as a result of a loss of a dwelling house at Whitcastle's farm. I think they shared these farms for a while and then they separated them, but not quite sure. And the view that the officer, this can't in itself be considered as a valid planning reason for a new dwelling house at Hazelbank. Okay, move to observation of appointed officers, page 461 to 464. You'll recall earlier on we spoke about section 75, planning obligations. It's referenced on page 464. That the Scottish Government will no longer support the use of section 75 planning obligations to tie the house to land or the use of occupancy conditions. Okay, comment. Sorry, Robert.
Chair, it was just in relation to the point about the occupancy condition. As with item 4, it is obviously within the gift of the LRB to impose whatever conditions they see fit, and in that case, you clearly wanted the occupancy condition on that permission. So, you are free to decide otherwise.
We've got to make that statement rather as indicate section 75.
Yeah.
That's fine. Done it again. Comments of applicant's agent on observations of appointed officer and further comments from third parties, page 465 to 468. Planning application form submitted on 20th of June, associated plans, pages 469 to 512. There's a labour requirement on page 488. Decision letter from Dumfries and Galloway Council, pages 513 to 520. The relevant extracts from the Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan, pages 521 to 598. And finally, you've got the photos that we've already seen, page 599 to 607. Do you consider that you have sufficient information to be able to make a decision? You're quite happy, Councillor McComb?
Yes, sufficient.
Thank you. Councillor McComb?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Blake? Thank you. Right, we can now go into discussion. Any issues you want to raise? Please. I suppose the first question I could ask you is, do you consider you need a site visit, or do you have enough information in front of you?
I personally feel of sufficient information.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
As would I, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to raise an issue, Councillor?
No, it's not an issue, just the map on page 507. Now, I know the narrative says it's a poorly maintained council road leading to Boreland. What's the approximate length of that road? I mean, it does emphasise just how remote this location is.
I think there's a comment from the applicant's agent. Is it now about 6 or 7 kilometres?
Thank you.
Chair, I'm just looking at page 433, the applicant saying the distance from the farm to the nearest settlement is 6.8 kilometres, if that was the question.
On page 445, it says it's located on the U287, approximately 3.5 kilometres northwest of Boreland. Councillor McComb.
Chair, in the clerk's notes, there was reference to a letter from the President of NFU Scotland. Do we have...
What page are you on, Councillor?
It's the clerk's notes, Chair. A letter which was not available at the time of the previous determination. Do we now have that letter?
Chair, just to give advice on that, there was a letter submitted from the President of NFU Scotland, submitted in support of the application, and I'm quite happy to say that that expressed support in principle for the proposal. It wasn't a terribly long letter, it was really just to indicate support. The difficulty I had with that, and I've seen the letter, as local review body members, you can request that information if you feel it's relevant. The only difficulty I had when I looked at that letter, it was clear it was not in front of the appointed officer when they made their decision. And because this is a review of that decision and the basis of which it was made, couldn't really entertain it as such. But I'm quite happy to tell you that was a general letter in support of the application. If you decide you want that, you want to issue a procedure notice to ask for that to be brought before you, then that can be done, but that would require a further meeting. I don't know if that gives you enough in relation to that, but it would be new information at this point in time. And on that basis, I had to advise the applicant's agent that I couldn't put it in the papers today.
Chair, I understand the reason why the letter has not appeared. Thank you.
Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chairman. I think in this case it's quite reasonable that the owner and his wife, who are both full-time employees on the farm, wish to live on the farm. There is a dwelling house there that's occupied by the stockman and his wife. I assume the stockman would just be one working unit and the wife would be there as his wife. We've heard that I think it's 2.6 units, working units that are required to operate the farm. I tend to agree with the agent's comments that it's unbelievable that they move in with the stockman and his wife or alter that house, because that would mean displacing them as well. That I'm minded to support this.
Councillor McComb.
I would be quite happy to second the motion from Councillor Blake. The farm is over 400 acres in size. It strikes me as a viable unit, and the labour requirement is 2.58 labour units. Well, it does require a stockman plus additional labour, and it would not be appropriate, given the isolated nature of the farm, for the owner to be living off the farm.
I think the main issue I've got is the siting of the house. I don't necessarily disagree with what you're saying, but the siting of the house is the issue I've got. They're wanting it in the top of a hill virtually, rather than certainly on quite a slope. It looks to be quite a slope for the pictures. Okay, Councillor McComb.
Chair, would that not be covered when the detailed application comes in? This is an application in principle.
Chair, that's correct. It is an application for planning permission in principle. You can't anticipate the form and design of the house at this stage, but you could reasonably assume, if you're looking at the siting of it in the land, if you like, in the context of the site, you can reasonably assume the presence of a dwelling house of at least a single story there. So it's reasonable to take that into account, but as you point out, there isn't any precise detail of the form that would take, nor in fact where it would actually sit within the application site. So that would be something that would be assessed, in the event of a future application being received, if you are minded to give it permission in principle today.
What sort of conditions could we apply just now to change the building site from the side of the hill down more to the same level as the existing house and the farm buildings? Would that be along the lines of what we'd be looking for?
Chairman, I would suggest the usual conditions that would be applied, also the condition of occupancy, similar to the previous one. The actual location of it, I think that could be left to the planners when it eventually does come in with the full detail, full planning applications.
Chair, it's a review. Obviously, the purpose of the local review body is to review a decision made by the appointed officer in relation to planning application. Planning application is defined by the red line site boundaries, so probably the best reference is on page 501 of the papers. Again, if you turn that 90 degrees, you can read the site for the dwelling house. So, yes, it's only planning permission in principle, but the location is fixed by that red line. So, any further application would need to be within that red line. So, for example, you wouldn't, as a result of this permission being granted, you wouldn't be able to shift that proposed house, for example, down to near the access track, because that would be out with the application site. The detailed dwelling house would need to be somewhere within that site. So, you know, you're looking at it in terms of the application that's been made.
Yeah. See. Thanks for that. Well, certainly, I think if you go to the next page, 503, where you've got the farm buildings and then the site for the dwelling house, I think I would like to see another site being brought forward rather than what they're proposing there.
I think going with what Robert said, I mean, that we're here to review the decision. We can't really effectively move site. It would need to be refused, and I would think that we have sufficient grounds here to go with this, to approve it. And I would certainly move that along with the usual conditions and the occupancy condition as well.
Certainly, Councillor Young.
Just to say, I'm quite happy to support Councillor Blake's suggestion, and I would agree it should be, this site and building should be approved.
That's fair enough. It's just that I feel if you're looking at that map, it's too far away from existing buildings that it's sticking out quite a bit, albeit it's in a quiet area of the countryside, I suppose. Robert, do you want to comment?
Yes, just turning to policy H3 as you have it at the moment. So you're looking at page 525 of the papers. It does say proposals for single houses in the remote rural area identified in supplementary guidance will need to demonstrate that the proposal is well related to its landscape setting. And if you look at the supplementary guidance on design quality of new development, it is legitimate. If you've got concerns about something in terms of its siting within the landscape, you could indeed, vary the decision of the appointed officer on that basis. If you were otherwise satisfied with it in principle, that decision would then presumably force a rethink about whether or not it would be worth coming in with a new application for a different location that was maybe less prominent. So, I mean, that is a legitimate reason to vary the decision that's been taken, certainly.
I'll just ask the question, is there anybody willing to support me that the siting is not appropriate?
Chairman, I feel there was sufficient screening by the trees that were present too. I'm quite happy with the site in principle.
That's the worst of the maps. It didn't show these things. It just shows it's quite a distance from any surroundings. What have we got in pictures here, Robert, please?
Chair, I can quite happily run through these again, so it just shows things relative to each other. You've got the more elevated land. There are trees there. To me, they look like predominantly beech trees, but they may be something slightly different. So you've got the steading at the lower level. Then you've got the track advancing up to the building, which was under construction at the time of this site visit. So I'm assuming that's now finished. And then panning around, you've got the site of the proposed house up in the hillside there, so a more elevated position. But you can see, just peeking around the gable of that building on the right-hand side, you've got tree cover there, mature tree cover. This is looking across to the building that was under construction, but as you pan round towards existing steading, you can see the tree cover coming into play on the left-hand side there. And more so here. I'm fairly sure those are beech trees. Possibly oaks, I don't know, trees aren't my strong point.
But the proposal no higher up than those trees, were they finished?
The best one that shows it, this is, if you're looking towards the application site up the field, showing the slopes. It's slightly to the side of that tree cover, but inevitably the tree cover will have a kind of screening and backclothing input depending on where you're viewing it from. I don't know if that helps, Chair.
Okay, gentlemen, I mean, your hands, I think I would prefer to, if we can alter the sighting of the house to come further down the hill, another site for it, rather than what's proposed here. Now, would that lead to refusal, Robert, or could we get a formal wording to ask them to do that?
I think the key issue here, Chair, is you've got a defined application site. Now, it's in principle, so you don't know what the detail of the house would be. For example, you couldn't at one extreme decide whether it was going to be a 2 or a 3-storey house or a bungalow. So you don't know that at this point in time. What you do know is someone's seeking permission in principle for a dwelling house at that particular location. If you envisage at this stage that isn't a particularly good landscape fit for a dwelling house, although that dwelling house isn't defined, you could refuse it on that basis. The difficulty is if you want it brought down significantly, as you were suggesting, that's going to take it out with the defined application site. So you're then trying to do something different, that would probably be subject of a further application.
Your hands, gentlemen. I don't think it's an appropriate site, but
I'd like to leave my motion on the table.
okay. You're supporting Councillor McComb?
Chair, at the time of a full application, a screening condition could be put in that you could have additional screening if necessary.
Do you want these sorts of conditions now, Robert?
Well, Chair, what you could do in hearing the LRB, it sounds like you're moving towards wanting to grant permission here and completely vary the appointed officer's decision, in which case, bearing in mind it's permission in principle, similar to item 4, your first condition would be seeking the submission of further details as part of a future application for approval of matters specified in conditions. You would then have 4 parts after that requiring submission of detail in that application or applications. So you'd be looking at things like design, finishes, scale, massing, boundary treatment, car parking, outbuildings, garages, levels information, drainage details. All this kind of stuff would come in at a later stage for approval. So those would be your first 5 conditions. Beyond that, if you felt that, say, boundary treatment was particularly important and you wanted a condition saying you needed the landscaping details to include, for example, hedging around the site or, indigenous tree planting, something of that nature, you could include that, if you felt it was important to emphasise it. Beyond that, you're probably again picking up things like the suggested conditions from consultees, for example, the Roads Authority. But I haven't looked at that yet. But no, if you wanted to put an extra condition on guiding, if you like, the landscaping scheme to be submitted, you could certainly do that. So you've got one condition requiring the submission of the detail and the other later condition, if you felt strongly about it, guiding what it should be.
Is that the road you want to go down, Councillor Blake?
Not particularly. I think we can leave that to when the application comes in. I would just like a motion as it stands.
Councillor Young, are you otherwise minded, or are you?
No, I'm in full agreement with Councillor Blake.
Right, clear. The decision's been made that we overturn the decision of the officer.
I've agreed to reverse the decision of the appointed officer and grant planning permission in principle for the erection of a dwelling house at Hazelbank Farm, Boreland, Lockerbie, subject to conditions, being the usual conditions of further detail that would appear in the planning application. There was discussion on occupancy, a condition similar to the previous one.
I think that would be appropriate in this case.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. what was the condition picked up from what's in the papers as well?
Yeah.
Similar to, again, item 4.
I have no other business. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thanks, Chair.